Are you in a place where your opportunity has changed? You're looking at whether you should jump or just re-innovate what it is that you're doing right now? Are you someone that's trying to find God's best for you? You're trying to find out, man, what am I called to do? And I'm tired of settling for what someone will pay me to do. How do I do what I was made to do? That right here is what we're talking about in this session. We're talking about how you can use the power of the new creation to recreate your career, your life, your income, and make your next chapter your best chapter. Now, before we get into this session is actually more about the remix and how you can take some of the available assets around you to remix your current situation into a better situation. If that can't be done, I will show you how to move on to the next opportunity and find God's design in that. So let's dig in. If you are someone who is looking and needing to make a jump, you're not where you want to be, you're trying to get to another place, I'm going to help you to find really a shortcut, almost a cheat code for you to get from where you're at to where you're going. I call it the jump. And the jump is really, it's almost like what you could say wraps itself in quantum theory, where they have these particles called quarks. And a quark is a subatomic particle that, if observed here, it can simultaneously just jump to another place in a way that is unpredictable and unseen. It's not something that people can detect how it went from one place to another. Some people call that a quantum leap. And we will be looking into your design and giving you ways that you can actually make the quantum leap from where you're at to where you want to be. And I call it the jump. You have the ability to jump from one place to another to make the quantum leap in a way that is, for the rest of us, undetectable. And it comes from something that is a part of your ingenious nature. Now, I love the term ingenious because it connects to a way that says there is a geniusness in you, and a geniusness is a generative ability, but it's the ingenious. You have a genius, and it's baked into your DNA. Threats to that are hopelessness. So if you have no hope for the future you're going into, that is a threat. Another threat is being too connected, fixated, and addicted to what you have been in the past. And so past identities oftentimes can limit you from stepping into your amazing next chapter. So that's what we're doing. We're talking about how you can make your next chapter your best chapter. How do we do that? The first place I'm going to start out is you might be someone who is in an opportunity, and you don't need to change opportunity. You just need to go through a remix. And a remix is where you take existing ingredients that you have and you make something slightly different. You do things in a slightly different way. I want to share something with you. This is from a book, U Squared, which if you are going through a change or you're looking at making a quantum leap, I would prescribe this book to you. And I am now sharing. Listen to this brief story about a fly.
A true story. I'm sitting in a quiet room at the Millcroft Inn, a peaceful little place hidden back among the pine trees about an hour out of Toronto. It's just past noon, late July, and I'm listening to the desperate sounds of a life-or-death struggle going on a few feet away. There's a small fly burning out the last of its short life's energies in a futile attempt to fly through the glass of the window pane. The whining wings tell a poignant story of the fly's strategy. Try harder, but it's not working. The frenzied effort offers no hope for survival. Ironically, the struggle is part of the trap. It is impossible for the fly to try hard enough to succeed at breaking through the glass. Nevertheless, this little insect has staked its life on reaching its goal through raw effort and determination. This fly is doomed. It will die there on the windowsill. Across the room, 10 steps away, the door is open. 10 seconds of flying time, and this small creature could reach the outside world it seeks. With only a fraction of the effort now being wasted, it could be free of this self-imposed trap. The breakthrough possibility is there. It would be so easy. Why doesn't the fly try another approach? Something dramatically different? How did it get so locked in on the idea that this particular route and determined effort offer the most promise for success? What logic is there in continuing until death to seek a breakthrough with more of the same? No doubt this approach makes sense to the fly. Regrettably, it's an idea that will kill. Trying harder isn't necessarily the solution to achieving more. It may not offer any real promise for getting what you want out of life. Sometimes, in fact, it's a big part of the problem. If you stake your hopes for a breakthrough on trying harder than ever, you may kill your chances for success.
So the story of the fly. Maybe right now you're looking at something and something in you is being triggered and you're like, I need to fight harder. I need to give more effort. And I want to temporarily give you a little bit of respite from that, a little bit of rest from that. And I want to bring you into a place of reconsideration, re-strategizing. It's not a place we need to stay forever, but it's worth considering how you can remix your top 5 ingredients. The top 5 ingredients, I call these multipliers. These are things that when we're about to take action, you're going to tell yourself you don't have enough of these things, but you do. When added to any situation that you're in right now, or that you will ever be in, these will change the dynamic of what you're going through. They'll create results. The first one is your faith. It's your belief. What do you believe? What is the hopeful belief that you have? Faith is actually not just a belief, it's actually a belief you can feel. So what is your faith? If you're doing something and you don't have faith, you're literally taking your efforts and dividing them. You're not adding, you're not even subtracting, you're dividing them. So we start there. Then we have time, money, talent, and relationships. Time, if you put your time towards something with faith, it's going to create something. It may not be the biggest thing in the world, but it will. Even with those two things put together, it will create something. It will, like water, eventually erode the course of what it is that you're trying to create, and eventually, through whether it's torture or whatever, it will create a path. So we have time, we have faith and time, and we have money. If you take money and you point it to anything, it will cause it to grow if you're doing it in a consistent manner. Faith, time, money. And by the way, isn't it interesting that when you know you're supposed to be doing something or when you're tracking towards a goal, aren't those the things that we feel like the most lack of? I don't have time. I've got to do this. I don't have the money. I've got to do that. And it's very interesting that with a lot of the people that I deal with, myself included, that oftentimes when those feelings of scarcity with time or money are there, that voice is really almost like it's the Judas voice. For those of you who don't know the Bible, Judas Iscariot was the disciple who betrayed Jesus. And sometimes it was said that he would say that when a precious resource was being spent, let's just say to perfume the feet of Jesus, Judas would say, why are we doing this with this when we should be doing that. And it's like that part of us that says, no, you can't do this. You should be doing that with this. And the truth is you end up doing neither. Have you ever noticed that? When you say you don't have time because you have to do this thing, are you really doing that thing? So time, money, talent. Talent. Now, talent, there are a couple of varieties. There's a talent that you get through repetitive exercise towards something, and then there's the talent that's a gift. And they're both good. I'd prefer to, like, you want to be able to exercise yourself in these things to grow and increase your ability, your skill, your sharpness. And we know that if there's a person who has talent, they can bring it to the marketplace will reward them. And a lot of times what I see is that people lack the ability to clarify how their talent can serve other people. And that brings me to the fifth multiplier, which is relationships. Relationships. Well, only if I had a million people following me, I would do that. If I had 200 customers, then it's like we think in terms of stuff we don't have, and we look past oftentimes the things that we do. And so I would ask you this: when you look at what it is that you want, what are the relationships that you could engage? I'm not asking you to, but what are the relationships you could engage to get you there? Do you want more sales? Talk to people who love you and who believe in you. Ask them who they can connect you with. Are you recruiting? Okay. Talk to people who are already working with you and ask them who else they need to invite to the party. You have not oftentimes because you ask not. And so finding ways to engage relationships can be the X factor that changes your story. We can do a whole session on just that alone. But I want to make you aware that you already do have some good things that are in front of you. You have great ingredients. I love the story of Ruth Graves Wakefield. Ruth Graves Wakefield, her and her husband opened a bed and breakfast in the late 1920s, early 1930s. And he was a meat packer. She was good at cooking. And her whole thing was she wanted to serve people good food. And she really, really looked forward to cooking the desserts at the end. One night came where she actually didn't realize it, but she ran out of an ingredient, a very important ingredient to make the butterscotch bisque cake that she was going to make. She looked for it. It was gone. No baker's chocolate. Well, what is there? Well, there's these semi-sweet chocolate chunks that were given to her by Andrew Nestle, rather. Andrew Nestle had given these to her, and they just sat in her cupboard, unused, until the time of need. So she changed the recipe up a little bit, threw these chunks of chocolate in it, and as you probably guessed, it was named after the place that she owned, the Toll House Inn. This became known as the Toll House Cookie. The Toll House Cookie, of course, is America's favorite treat, the chocolate chip cookie. And if you think it was there because times were easy, no, it actually spread in its popularity because the time of its creation was the first year of the Great Depression. So difficulty actually created the perfect environment for her remix. What is a remix that you might go through? No, I don't want a remix. I need to jump into something new. Maybe you don't need to jump into something new. Maybe you need to slightly alter how you are using your resources. Here's a question for you. Have you ever heard of Sir Humphrey Davy or Joseph Swan? Probably not. I hadn't. I had to look them up, write them down. Do you know who they were? They invented the light bulb. No, Donnie, you're kidding me. They didn't invent the light bulb. Thomas Edison invented the light bulb. That's what we think, right? Popular consensus is Thomas Edison invented the light bulb. He didn't. All he did was he found the right filament. He took their recipe and he slightly improved it. And he made it his recipe. And now the result is he was able to mass produce it. He was able to serve others on high levels with something he'd done that was only a slight variation of what they had. Now, it took him 1,000 attempts, according to legend. It took him 1,000 attempts to actually find the proper filament for his light bulb. Oddly, there are still Edison bulbs today that are burning more than 100 years later. Isn't that crazy? But what is interesting about Edison is that he said his greatest invention was not an invention he had. He had over 1,000 patents. His greatest invention was taking the inventions of others and improving them. Think about that. Have you ever heard, if you grew up in the 80s or 90s and you grew up listening to certain music, and then all of a sudden you hear that old music being remixed into something new? Isn't that cool? Maybe you're a purist and you think not. But I love the idea of when someone takes an old thing and they make it new. They remix it. So how can you take your talent, your time, your money, your faith and your belief and your relationships and remix those? What stops you? A lot of us are stopped because we are addicted to or fixated upon who it was that we thought we were, that we had to be. There was a period in my family's life where we would travel from one Airbnb to another. Every 3 months, we would move around the nation, and we loved it. People were following us in that journey. And at one point, it came time to stop. And it's very interesting that it almost felt like we had to keep going, not because we wanted to, but because this was the identity we had built for ourselves. You see, many of us suffer a smaller version of what world famous pop stars might suffer through. Elvis Presley. Elvis Presley was world famous. He had money beyond belief. He had fame beyond belief. He had a huge house, and he couldn't leave it because if he did, he was mobbed. Michael Jackson, I remember just in my era growing up and watching, if the guy ever went out in public, he was mobbed. They were imprisoned by their own success. And maybe you are too. But let me just leave it here. Before you look to jump into something new, look to see if there's any way you can remix your ingredients. Now, if you're in an industry, I have several people who work in an industry that's on a decline. Look for the opportunity, not the obstacle. Sometimes the opportunity is found in the obstacle. So those are your multipliers. Let's map it out real quick, how this should look. You are evaluating your situation. Here's what I'm going to ask you to do. Number one, ask yourself, what can change? And we have two different scenarios there. Can I change? Well, can I change? What can change about the situation? Okay, those are important. If there is nothing that can change about either of these, then you need to go to the next phase. You need to move on. This is not for you. Not every situation is for every person. The next thing that I want you to do is look and see if the capacity for income can change. So evaluate your opportunity based on what the income levels and at the same time, joy. So if I changed, could that change my income? And is there something that can be changed about my situation that could increase my income? Is there something that I can do that I can change that would increase my joy levels in doing what I'm doing? Is there something situationally that can change that would change my joy levels? This might be what you do. It might be how you do it. It might be who you talk to or how you get to talk to them. For me, I wanted liberty in the way that I got to interact with my situation, which would increase my joy and also my income. So these things aren't only these separate, different little categories. These things all bleed together. So my question is, when you look at what you can change, consider your multipliers, right? You have your time, you have money, you have talent, we have your faith, and then we have relationships. Is there any of those that you could apply differently towards that change to get and create what it is that you want? If you can, then the answer is yes, you need to do a remix, okay? If you can do the remix, you need to get permission. Do you need to get permission from a boss, from a spouse? I don't know, but you always will need to get permission from yourself to do things differently. If you realize that this is something that you cannot move forward with, there's no change possible, then you are going to have to commit to recreate. That means recreating a new career, a new opportunity, something new. This is you becoming something new, and it's not impossible. Sometimes that releases the greatest power inside of you. And to do that, you will still need to get permission. And again, this isn't from necessarily your parents. It's not from your spouse, but it could be. It's not from your boss, but it could be. Really, this is an inside job. This is you giving yourself permission. So, my friend, no matter how bleak your situation looks, no matter if you only see a dead end, always remember you are a powerful human being. And even if you're getting punched out, you're up against the ropes, if you're still on your feet, you have knockout power. And you might be just one slight remix away from your next big breakthrough. If this doesn't solve your problems and you think you might need to go recreate yourself and start something new, then click on the video that's linked here, and we'll see you there.